On a rainy morning in New York, he woke up earlier than usual. He brewed a weak cup of coffee, his eyes lingering on his little daughter still fast asleep in her tiny bed. To the outside world, he was just a struggling single dad, an underestimated office worker with no future. People scoffed, how could a single father ever become a CEO? He can't even take care of his kid properly. But they were wrong, because those doubts became the silent fire burning inside him. The fire to prove that being a single dad did not mean being a failure. He would not just rise, he would outsmart the very board of directors who once dismissed him as nothing. New York, rush hour. People squeezed into the subway, sipping coffee and scrolling on their phones, each looking as if they were about to close $1 billion deal. And there he was, Marcus, a single dad, clutching a worn-out briefcase that looked ready to burst at the seams, while holding tightly to the tiny hand of his daughter, Emily. "Dad, your bag is about to explode," Emily mumbled, half asleep. "But cheeky," Marcus chuckled. "Well, at least it's more loyal than the guys at my company." The crowd eyed him, a man in a wrinkled suit, leading a little girl, like he had stumbled into the wrong movie about Wall Street elites. People were used to CEOs in luxury cars, carrying sleek laptops. Not a father shoving a lunchbox into his kid's backpack while sprinting toward the office. But even with his clumsy appearance, Marcus's eyes carried a sly glint. He knew the world ranked him lower than the building's doorman, and that was exactly his advantage. As he entered the office, a co-worker sneered, "Hey Marcus, heard you submitted another project proposal. Didn't the board crush you last time? Didn't that scare you off?" Marcus smirked. Some people get slapped once and hide forever. Me? I just call it mental weightlifting. Mocking laughter echoed around him. Nobody believed a single dad who left early every day to pick up his daughter could ever sit at the leadership table. But right then, Marcus quietly unzipped his bag and pulled out a thick stack of papers. A proposal that could change not only the company, but his destiny. Conference room, 15th floor. The air always felt 2 degrees colder than the rest of the building. There sat the board members, polished suits, smug faces, radiating the aura of gods deciding who lived and who failed. Marcus walked in, dropped his battered briefcase hard onto the long oak table. Thud. The sound made several brows twitch in annoyance. "Marcus again?" One board member snickered. "We haven't even forgotten the circus show you gave us last time." Laughter rippled through the room, cold as ice. Marcus didn't blink. He inhaled, opened his proposal. Crisp pages slid across the table. Charts, numbers, strategies. "This isn't a circus act," Marcus said slowly, voice calm but firm. "This is the opportunity to wake this company up before our rivals swallow us whole." An older board member tapped the table, smirking. "And who do you think you are? A single dad knows corporate strategy. Please, you should stick to changing diapers." The room erupted in laughter. Marcus swallowed his anger, but the corner of his lips curled into a dangerous smile. "Maybe I'm just a single dad," he said, "but at least I know how to keep my promises. And I promise you this. This idea will make you regret ever underestimating me." The air shifted. The laughter quieted. And in a few pairs of eyes, for the very first time, flickered something new. Curiosity. The conference room door shut behind him, the board's laughter still echoing like a cruel soundtrack. Marcus walked down the hallway, his steps heavy, but his eyes lit up, sharp and sly, like a man who had just spotted the winning move in a chess game. A younger colleague hurried after him, whispering, "Marcus, just give it up. How many times have you pitched ideas? They laugh every time. Aren't you tired?" Marcus stopped, grinned with a squint. "Tired? Sure. But you know what's worse than being tired? Living invisible for the rest of your life." He stepped outside. The cold wind whipped his suit jacket open, his hair a mess. Against the glittering skyline of skyscrapers, Marcus looked like a loser. But only he knew. The battered briefcase he carried held more than papers. It held a weapon. His idea, though mocked, still had value. He would prove it, not with words in a boardroom, but with action in the real world, where the market spoke louder than any board member. He muttered, under his breath, almost to himself, "Fine. If they won't listen, then I'll make the whole world listen." Marcus sat in his cramped apartment, a dim yellow light spilling over the dining table covered with his proposal. Emily was doodling with crayons beside him, occasionally glancing up. "Dad, why do you look so serious?" Marcus patted her head. "I'm trying to turn a dream into a good dinner for the two of us." In reality, nothing was romantic. To prove his idea, Marcus needed capital. The problem? His bank account barely covered 1 month's rent and a stack of instant noodles. The next day, he walked into a small investor group. Their office was on the 9th floor of an old building, the air thick with coffee and cigarette smoke. Marcus laid out his plan, speaking with the conviction of a man pitching to the whole world. When he finished, silence filled the room. Then a pudgy man leaned back, clapping slowly. "Nice story, Marcus, but sorry. We don't fund single dads chasing CEO dreams. Touching, sure, but the market isn't for the faint of heart." Laughter erupted. The rejection stung like a slap across the face. Marcus clenched his fist under the table, blood rushing, hot to his cheeks. But instead of breaking, he lifted his head, offering a faint, sharp smile. "Thank you, gentlemen, because now I know exactly who I'm betting against. Not the market, but your fear." He gathered his papers and walked out. Their laughter trailed behind him. This time, it sounded less like mockery and more like a dare. After the blunt rejection from the investors, Marcus didn't head home right away. He walked along a neon-lit street, his mind racing, but his stride steady. To the world, he looked like a loser clutching a battered briefcase. But inside, a new plan was forming. Not relying on the board, not on investors, but on his own audacity. That night, Marcus opened his old laptop. The screen cracked in one corner and began typing emails. Not to investors this time, but to potential clients. If the company wouldn't give him a chance, he would make one himself. Emily shuffled out, hugging her teddy bear, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, why aren't you asleep yet?" Marcus glanced at her and smiled. "Because I'm trying to figure out how tomorrow we'll eat pizza instead of instant noodles." He sent dozens of emails. Most went unanswered. A few came back with curt replies. Not interested. But then, an unexpected name appeared in his inbox. A small but daring company, looking for the exact solution Marcus had just proposed. For the first time in weeks, Marcus laughed out loud, startling Emily. "What is it, Daddy?" "Oh, it's just that someone finally decided to take a single dad seriously." 2 days later, Marcus had a meeting with that small company. It was a scrappy little startup, their office tucked inside an old building with an elevator that screeched like it could plummet any second. Emily begged to tag along, but Marcus had to leave her with the neighbor. He straightened his faded tie and walked into a cramped meeting room. 3 people were already waiting. Young, eager-eyed, but skeptical. The founder, a woman with curly hair and an oversized shirt, tilted her head and asked bluntly, "Marcus, why should we trust a single dad who was laughed out of his own boardroom?" Marcus froze for half a second, then chuckled. "Because that board just proved one thing. I'm not somebody's puppet. I survive on truth, not politics." The room went quiet. Then one young man leaned forward. "Sounds good, but what if you fail?" Marcus shrugged, eyes gleaming. "Then I eat instant noodles for a few more months. But if I succeed, we're all having steak." This time, the laughter was different. Not mocking, but intrigued. The atmosphere shifted. For the first time, someone actually wanted to hear Marcus out. Marcus pulled out his battered briefcase. This time, not in the icy boardroom, but in a cramped office that smelled of cheap coffee and pressure. He laid his proposal on the table, his voice steady, like a conductor beginning a symphony. He spoke of shifting markets, of competitors asleep on their past victories, and of a strategy that could double market share within a year if acted on quickly. Every number he presented was sharp. Every chart made sense. The startup team listened intently, but when Marcus paused for a sip of water, the founder frowned. Sounds tempting, but why would someone like you want to work with us? You could pitch this to a bigger company. Marcus smirked, his eyes laced with irony. Big companies? They don't want ideas. They want obedient puppets. That's not me. I chose you because at least you've got the guts to try. And sometimes it's the reckless ones who change the game. Silence again. Then the young man slammed his hand on the table. I like this guy. Reckless fits reckless. The air crackled with energy, but it wasn't over. The founder locked eyes with Marcus, her gaze sharp as if testing him. Fine, you get one chance. A pilot project. If you're right, we're with you. If you're wrong, we both go down. Marcus smiled, as if this was the moment he'd been waiting for all along. Deal. On the first day of the pilot project, Marcus realized the reckless startup really was reckless. Their office had nothing but 3 beat-up laptops, a broken printer grinding rah, and a fridge with exactly 2 flat sodas. He laughed. Perfect. At least we've got nothing to lose, except patience. The team burst out laughing, then threw themselves into work. Marcus pulled all-nighters, drafting strategies and cleaning messy data. Emily played junior secretary by his side, handing him pencils, sticking notes, yawning. Daddy, I thought CEOs were supposed to sleep a lot to be smarter. Marcus patted her head. Yeah, but broke CEOs drink coffee to fake being smarter. The first hurdle came faster than expected. The company's data was a tangled mess. Potential partners were skeptical, some even sneering. A single dad thinks he can change the market. Maybe he should write fairy tales instead. Marcus smirked, jotting in his notebook. Fairy tale, huh? Fine. But this time, the prince doesn't marry the princess. He kicks down the whole castle. In the face of chaos, Marcus didn't break. If anything, he grew more determined. He knew that to prove himself, he had to start from 0, maybe even below 0. After 3 sleepless weeks, the tiny office that once reeked of coffee now buzzed with keyboard clatter and laughter. Marcus and the scrappy startup had finally landed their first trial contract with a small distributor. Not a giant client, but enough to prove the idea wasn't a joke. On signing day, Marcus wore his old suit, his tie crooked, but his eyes blazed. He shook hands with the client, feeling as if the whole world was cheering behind him. Emily dashed in, shouting, "Daddy! Pizza tonight?" Marcus laughed. Not just pizza, ice cream too. The whole team erupted like kids winning a soccer game. An idea once mocked was finally standing on its own, however small. But the joy didn't last. That evening, as Marcus cleared his desk, his phone buzzed. A short text from an old coworker at his company. Watch out, the board knows you've been running something on the side. They're not happy. Marcus froze. His victory hadn't even cooled, and already a new storm was on the horizon. The next morning, Marcus walked into the office with an unusual calm. He knew last night's warning wasn't an idle threat. Sure enough, as soon as he sat down, the director's secretary appeared, her voice cold as steel. Marcus, the board wants to see you, now. 15th floor boardroom. This time, there was no mocking laughter, only heavy silence. The old faces around the table stared at him like men who already had the knife in their hands. The chairman spoke slowly. We hear you've been running a side operation, even signing contracts. Who do you think you are? A single dad who can play 2 roles at once? Marcus kept steady, replying, I haven't broken any laws. I'm only proving my idea has value, even if you refuse to believe it. Another board member tapped his pen against the table, smirking. Idea? Around. Here we call that a conflict of interest. And you know, this company has no room for traitors. Marcus froze for a beat. He understood. They didn't care about conflict of interest. What they feared was that if his idea worked, it would expose their ignorance and arrogance. In that moment, Marcus smiled wryly. Looks like you're good at one thing, setting traps. But don't forget, even mice know how to bite back. The air tightened like a drawn bowstring. The board had just declared war. Leaving the boardroom, Marcus knew one thing. His lowly desk job was as good as gone. The board would brand him a traitor and use it as their excuse to kick him out. Rumours spread like wildfire. In the cafe downstairs, co-workers whispered, "Did you hear? Marcus is about to get fired." Called it. What could a single dad ever pull off anyway? Marcus heard it all. Instead of rage, he smiled. Maybe being underestimated was his greatest weapon. The less people watched him, the easier it would be to flip the game unnoticed. That night, he called the startup team. "We have to move faster. The board's going to act soon, and I don't have much time left." "But what if you get fired?" the founder asked nervously. Marcus sighed, glancing at Emily asleep on the sofa, her teddy bear slipping from her hand. "Then I lose my job, but we'll have a company. And I'd rather lose a job than let my daughter grow up seeing her dad quit." In that moment, he was no longer just an employee. He had become a true risk-taker, ready to launch his first counterattack. A few days later, the board called an emergency meeting. Everyone expected Marcus to walk in, apologize, and beg for his job. But when he entered, calm face, eyes sharp as blades, the air shifted. The chairman slammed a file onto the table. "Marcus, you've crossed the line. Do you understand what this means?" Marcus sat down slowly, opened his laptop. He didn't say a word, just projected the latest numbers onto the screen, trial revenue from the client he and the startup had signed. The figure was clear, 25% growth in just 2 weeks. The room froze. One board member blurted out, "Wait, is this real?" Marcus smirked. "Real. And if you had listened to me from the start, those numbers would belong to this company. But since you didn't, they belong to me and my partners." Chaos erupted. Some faces flushed with rage, others with panic. The board, so used to judging from above, suddenly felt their own chairs wobble beneath them. Marcus leaned forward, voice dripping with irony. "You call me a traitor, but tell me, who's really betraying the company? The man who brings profit, or the ones who let opportunity slip away?" No one answered. For the first time, the board was silent. And for the first time, Marcus held the upper hand. The silence in that boardroom was only temporary. The board, built on power and pride, would never let a single dad humiliate them and walk away unscathed. A few days later, Marcus received the official email. Notice of disciplinary action. Suspension from duties until further decision. He stared at the screen, the corner of his lips curling into a wry smile. So that's how they want to play? Fine. Time for me to play big too. The news spread fast. Many co-workers avoided him like he carried a plague, but there were other looks, curious, even admiring, that followed him as he walked out of the building. Meanwhile, the board met, in secret. One cranky old man slammed the table. "We need to crush him now. If Marcus and that cheap little startup succeed, we'll be disgraced." Another nodded. "Then leak it. Make him a public joke. A single dad with delusions of being a CEO? The press will eat it up." Marcus didn't know it yet. But the next storm was already forming, and this time, it wouldn't just be inside the company. It would be out in the open. One morning, right after dropping Emily off at school, Marcus got a call from an old friend. "Marcus, have you read the papers yet? They're writing about you." He stopped at a newsstand, and there it was, in bold across the front page. "Single dad delusions, thinks he can be a CEO." The article dripped with mockery, calling him a pitiful man chasing a childish dream, a failure at work and at home. They even dug into his private life, how his wife had left, how he was raising his daughter alone, turning pain into public entertainment. Strangers stared, Some sneered, some shook their heads in pity. Marcus picked up the paper, flipped through it, and then laughed. A reporter nearby asked curiously, "You're not angry?" Marcus replied calmly, "Angry? No. You just did what I could never afford. Free advertising. Now the whole city knows my name." The quote spread like wildfire. Online chatter exploded. What began as mockery turned into curiosity, and then people started looking into Marcus's idea. The board wanted to make him a joke. Instead, they had made him a name everyone had to mention. Within a week, Marcus's name was everywhere. On social media, fiery debates erupted. He's just a single dad with delusions. Being a CEO isn't child's play. At least he's trying. Meanwhile, those boardroom guys only know how to judge. A photo of Marcus walking down the street with Emily, briefcase in hand, went viral. Some mocked him, captioning it, "The poorest CEO in the city." But others wrote heartfelt comments. "This dad is the real CEO, the CEO of his own life." Talk shows began inviting Marcus, but the board quickly pressured them to cancel. Instead, small YouTube channels and independent blogs scrambled to interview him. They didn't just see a joke, they saw a living story of grit and determination. Marcus realized he wasn't fighting alone anymore. The public was divided, yes, but at least now he had allies, people who believed failure wasn't the end, but the beginning. The board had run out of patience, seeing public opinion tilt toward Marcus. They struck with a vicious move, suing him for intellectual property theft. The press release read, "Former employee Marcus has violated professional ethics and stolen company-owned ideas." Mainstream outlets jumped on it, painting him not as a delusional dreamer anymore, but as a fraud. Marcus heard the news while having dinner with Emily. She looked at him, her little voice trembling. "Daddy, they say you stole something. Is it true?" Marcus's throat tightened. He bent down to meet her eyes. "No, Emily, I didn't steal a thing. The idea was mine, and they're just afraid the world will know that." Emily nodded, hugging him tight, whispering, "I believe you." That small sentence gave him strength. Instead of retreating, Marcus did the unthinkable. He published his entire plan online for everyone to see. "You want to call me a thief?" he wrote on his personal blog. "Fine, then let the world judge. This idea isn't the company's, it's mine. And if you're so confident, prove me wrong in front of everyone." The internet exploded. From a weak position, Marcus flipped the board's attack into his sharpest counterstrike yet. The internet erupted after Marcus's post. Thousands of shares, tens of thousands of comments. Critics mocked, skeptics sneered, but supporters multiplied fast. One comment stood out. "What we need are more Marcuses, people who dare to stand against the arrogance of power." A photo of Marcus and Emily in their cramped apartment, papers piled high on the table, went viral. People dubbed him the living room CEO. What began as a joke turned into inspiration. This is how giants are born. Independent reporters started showing up, not to dig dirt, but to tell his story. A small TV channel aired an interview where Marcus said, "I'm not trying to be a hero. I just want to prove that a single dad has the right to dream, and the right to make that dream real." The words lit a spark. From a delusional fool, Marcus was becoming a symbol for everyone who had been underestimated but refused to bow down. And the board was seething with rage. Marcus's rise spread beyond control. Small blog posts gave way to prime time, news segments. People weren't just debating online anymore. They were talking in cafes, on subways, in business school lectures. One professor even used his story in class. This is the essence of entrepreneurship. Rejected, mocked, yet still standing. The wave of support opened doors. A small venture capital firm reached out. "Marcus, we'd like to meet. Your idea has potential, and we admire how you've stood firm against the noise. But with opportunity came traps. Media companies approached him, promising to turn his story into a reality show for profit. Old friends suddenly resurfaced, patting his back, sweetly suggesting partnerships. Marcus realized not everyone truly believed in him. Many just smelled opportunity, circling like vultures over a carcass. He joked to Emily, half serious. "Sweetheart, when a lot of people suddenly want to be your friend, it means one of two things. Either you just won the lottery, or you're about to be someone's dinner." Emily giggled, but Marcus knew. From now on, every step had to be more careful than ever. The VC's meeting room wasn't as fancy as Marcus had imagined. No $1,000 paintings, no glossy oak tables, just fluorescent lights, a round table, stained with old coffee. But the eyes across from him were sharper than any boardroom he'd ever faced. A young investor tapped the table, blunt. "Marcus, you've got thousands of fans online. But we don't fund internet stars. We fund results. So where's the proof this idea survives in the real world?" Marcus took a deep breath. He presented the trial contract report. The 25% growth still there. But the older investor smirked. "Nice numbers. But that's one small client. What's your plan when you're facing dozens, even hundreds? Do you have a team? Do you have capital?" The questions cut straight to his weakness. Marcus paused, then chuckled. "You're right. I don't have capital. I don't have a massive team. But I have what most big companies lost a long time ago. The hunger to prove I can't be broken." The room was silent for a beat. Then one investor nodded slowly, intrigued but skeptical. "All right, Marcus," he said. "We'll give you a small investment, not enough to be safe, but enough to see if you're really a survivor or just a good headline." Marcus clenched his fist. He knew this wasn't just funding. This was a life or death test. The first investment hit their account, and the startup team celebrated with fried chicken and the last flat sodas in the fridge. But the joy lasted only one night. By morning, reality hit. Little money, too much work, and 10 times the pressure. Marcus hired 2 young employees, but the office was so cramped that when one stood up, someone else's chair got stuck. The broken printer stayed broken, and the internet cut out every few hours. Emily sat in the corner, doing homework, teasing, "Daddy, your company looks like a classroom, except no teacher here ever gets to sleep." Marcus laughed, then turned, back to the mountain of plans. New clients started coming in, but with contracts came chaos, late orders, wrong data, even customers cancelling deals at the last minute. One young employee panicked. "Marcus, if this keeps up, we're done for." Marcus glanced at the messy pile of papers, sighed, then gave a bitter smile. "No, we're not done yet. This is just the warm-up. Hell hasn't even started." He knew that small investment was just a spark. If he didn't control it, it could burn everything down. The pressure kept mounting. 3 new clients had just signed, but 1 already cancelled for lack of confidence. Funds were thinning, employees bickering from exhaustion. One evening, Marcus stepped out onto his tiny balcony, staring at the glowing city below. The whole world seemed to be moving forward, while he and his team were stuck in place. His phone rang. It was the investor. The voice was cold. "Marcus, we gave you money to see if you'd survive. But if you don't turn this around in 1 month, we're pulling out." Marcus gripped the phone tight. 1 month? At this rate, it was a death sentence. He walked back inside. Emily was colouring a picture, a small house with 2 people, 1 dad, 1 daughter. On the roof, she scribbled, "CEO family." Marcus chuckled, eyes stinging. At that moment, he knew it was risk it all or lose it all. He called a team meeting that night. "We're launching a public pilot, not just for a few clients, open to everyone. If we fail, we lose everything. But if we succeed, we blow up." The room was silent. Then one young employee whispered, "Sounds insane." But at least insane is better than waiting to die. Marcus nodded. The decision was made. Launch day turned their tiny office into a war zone. Computers whirred, phones rang non-stop, keyboards clattered like machine guns. Marcus paced like a caged lion, nervous, thrilled, terrified all at once. The website went live. Traffic spiked within hours, and then crash. The screen flashed red with errors. A staffer shouted, "Crap! The server's down!" Silence. For a moment, all hope seemed to vanish. Marcus clenched his jaw, voice hoarse. "No, we're not. Giving up. Fix it now. If we can't afford stronger servers, then we'll rig up old machines. I don't care how, just keep it alive." Everyone dove in. Emily sat in the corner, worried. "Daddy, is everything ruined?" Marcus crouched beside her, smiling softly. "No, sweetheart. This is just a chess game, and we haven't lost until there are no moves left." Hours later, the site flickered, back online. Traffic poured in again. This time, it held. The first order popped up, then the second, then the third. The office erupted in cheers, but in Marcus's eyes, joy mixed with caution. He knew this was only the beginning, and the further they climbed, the harder the fall would be. Within a week, Marcus's public launch had blown past all expectations. Traffic tripled. Orders poured in faster than they could process. The same media that once mocked him now ran sensational headlines. "Single Dad creates startup miracle." Customers praised the fresh service. On social media, the hashtag #SharkSingleDadCEO began to spread. People no longer saw him as a fool, but as a symbol of resilience. But as the spotlight grew, so did the shadows. In a high-rise office, the board watched every number, every article. The chairman slammed a newspaper onto the table, growling, "We cannot let him grow any further. If he proves his idea works, the real failures will be us." Another board member whispered, "Then it's time to call in favors, press, banks, partners, squeeze him from every side." Marcus had no idea. While he and his team cheered at every new order, the machinery of power was already turning, preparing to crush the very flame he had lit. Everything was going smoothly until disaster struck. The bank suddenly froze Marcus's company account, citing suspicious transactions. Suppliers abruptly delayed shipments, and worse, headlines started flooding in. "Is the Single Dad CEO's service unreliable?" Customers complain. Great idea. Chaotic execution. Marcus gripped the paper so hard it crumpled. He knew instantly. This wasn't random. This was the board's hand at work. Inside the office, panic spread. One young woman broke down. "We've been working day and night, and now they're calling us frauds. Who's going to trust us after this?" Marcus took a deep breath, standing before the team. "They want us to collapse in fear, but listen, if we quit, they win. If we stand, they'll be the ones trembling." Emily looked up, eyes wide. "Daddy, are you trembling?" Marcus smiled, ruffling her hair. "Of course, but I'm trembling with excitement." The line made the whole team laugh, through tears. In that moment, Marcus turned fear into fuel. He knew the real war had just begun. Bad news kept spreading, but Marcus refused to stay silent. Instead of hiding, he chose to face the public head-on. One evening, in his cramped apartment, he went live using his old cracked laptop. No professional backdrop, no fancy lights. Just a single dad sitting with his daughter, stacks of papers and instant noodle cups behind them. But that raw honesty drew tens of thousands of viewers. Marcus looked straight into the camera. "Some call me a fraud, some call me delusional. Maybe they're partly right. I am delusional because I believe a single dad has the right to dream big. But I've never deceived anyone. This idea, this work, it's built from our sweat and tears." Emily sat beside him, holding up a paper with the scribbled words, "CEO Dad," The innocent gesture melted thousands of hearts. By the time the livestream ended, social media exploded. The hashtag CEODad shot to the top of the trends. People shared the story not just out of sympathy, but because they saw themselves in it, underestimated, yet unbroken. Marcus had turned pain into a weapon, and this time, that weapon was empathy. After the live stream, everything exploded. Articles praising Marcus spread everywhere. People called him CEO Dad, a symbol for the underestimated daring to challenge the system. New customers poured in, not just for the product, but to support the story. Revenue soared. In the cramped office, employees cheered, and Emily jumped like she had just won the lottery. Elsewhere, the board was furious. The chairman slammed the table. "Unbelievable! We threw mud at him, and he turned it into gold." Another growled, "If public opinion is on his side, then we hit where he can't fight back. Legal. Drag him into court, bleed him dry with lawsuits." The plan passed. Days later, Marcus received a court summons. Headlines spread instantly. CEO Dad sued. Legal battle begins. In his tiny apartment, Marcus stared at the papers in silence. Emily looked up and whispered, "Daddy, are they trying to take everything from us?" Marcus hugged her tightly, answering softly, "No, sweetheart. They just want to take my faith. But that's the one thing they'll never steal." On court day, Marcus wore his old suit, tie a little crooked, but his stance steady. Reporters crowded the entrance, microphones shoved in his face. "Marcus, are you afraid of losing? Did you really steal ideas from your former company?" Marcus only smiled, holding Emily's hand, walking silently. The image hit front pages the next morning. CEO Dad, calm in the storm. Inside, the board's lawyer unleashed a barrage of accusations, voice sharp as knives. Evidence shows Mr. Marcus took company data to build his own project. This is outright betrayal. Marcus clenched his fist, but rose to respond. "No data was taken. The only thing I carried with me was what they could never own, my ideas and my determination." The courtroom stirred. The judge frowned, undecided. And then, a woman's voice rang out from the gallery. It was the young startup founder, the first partner who believed in Marcus. She stood tall, voice firm. "I confirm this idea belongs to Marcus. I witnessed him build it from zero. If necessary, I'll testify as a witness." The courtroom erupted. The board members went pale. And for the first time in this legal war, Marcus realized he was no longer fighting alone. That day, the court gave no verdict. The judge's gavel fell, announcing a delay for further evidence. The board thought dragging the case out would bleed Marcus dry, but they didn't realize the pause only fueled the fire of public opinion. News spread. Partner confirms Marcus didn't steal idea. A clip of the startup founder standing up for him went viral, shared millions of times. On social media, the hashtag Franchi Justice for CEO Dad shot to the top of the trends. One reporter commented on live TV, "Win or lose, Marcus has done what many only dream of, turning a personal struggle into a collective voice for everyone who's been underestimated or oppressed." In his small apartment, Marcus scrolled through waves of supportive comments. Emily sat beside him, eyes wide with wonder. "Daddy, everyone says you're a hero." Marcus chuckled, shaking his head. "A hero? No, sweetheart. Just a dad trying to do what's right. But if they want to call me that, I guess that's fine." He never chased the spotlight. Somehow, the spotlight had found him. The board was out of patience. Smears, lawsuits, financial pressure, none of it had broken Marcus. Instead, public opinion leaned harder in his favor. In a closed meeting, the chairman growled, "We use the final strike. If we don't, the shareholders will throw us out." The plan: hire media operatives to fabricate evidence that Marcus had falsified data during his pilot project. One decisive blow to turn him from a symbol into a criminal in the public's eyes. Word leaked. An anonymous journalist emailed Marcus. "Be careful, they're setting a trap. This will be the final round." Marcus read it, exhaled slowly. He knew the time had come. No more defense, only offense. That night, he gathered his team in the cramped office. His voice rang firm. "They'll fight dirty, but we won't fight with dirt. We fight with truth. This will be the last battle. Either we win, or we lose everything." At the door, Emily hugged her teddy bear, whispering softly, "Daddy, if this is the last battle, then I believe you'll win." The room went silent for a moment. Then, one by one, every teammate nodded. No one would quit. Together, they stepped into the biggest gamble of their lives. One morning, the media exploded. CEO Dad falsified data. Was the symbol all a lie? The evidence was rolled out. Distorted reports, spliced emails. Independent experts appeared on air, shaking their heads. We all trusted a man who turned out to be a master of fabrication. Public opinion wavered. Supporters were furious at the obvious smear, but skeptics pounced. "See? I told you. No way a single dad becomes a CEO." Delusions always collapse eventually. Inside the tiny office, tension was suffocating. One young staffer slammed the table. "We can't let them smear us like this. We have to fight back, now." Marcus stayed silent for a long moment before saying quietly, "Fight back, yes, but not with words, with truth. If they forge fake evidence, then we release all the real evidence. Every email, every log, every step we've taken, everything." The room froze. One young woman stammered, "But if we release it all, our trade secrets will be exposed." Marcus nodded, eyes steely. "Yes, but this is the final gamble. Better to risk secrets than to lose trust. And trust is the one thing they'll never steal." Marcus opened his laptop, hands trembling slightly but eyes steady. He and the team had spent the entire night compiling every piece of real data. Contracts, emails, reports, drafts, down to the smallest detail. By dawn, the post went live. "I have nothing to hide. Here is the whole truth. Hundreds of files were released. People verified, cross-checked." Within hours, the public erupted. The evidence from the board was clearly fabricated. Independent experts confirmed. The documents Marcus published have timestamps, full email chains. There's no sign of tampering. The hashtag #truth with Marcus exploded. Public opinion flipped 180 degrees. Even former skeptics admitted, didn't think he'd reveal everything. Respect. This is what a CEO looks like, transparent and accountable. In the tiny office, employees hugged each other, tears flowing. Emily leapt into her father's arms, whispering, "See, Daddy, I told you you'd win." Marcus held her close, smiling softly. He knew the final battle wasn't over yet, but at least the truth was on his side. Judgment Day. The courtroom was packed with reporters and spectators, the air so tense you could hear every breath. The board still wore smug faces, confident that money and power would shield them until the end. The judge read the verdict, voice echoing. After reviewing all evidence, the court declares Marcus not guilty. The board's accusations are baseless and show signs of fabrication. The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. Marcus closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, then smiled calmly. Emily hugged him tight, cheering. "I knew it. You really are a CEO." Meanwhile, the board members bowed their heads, some already under investigation for fraud. Their once untouchable empire was beginning to crack. Months later, Marcus officially launched his own company. No longer a living room startup, but a serious business with real investment and hundreds of new clients. People called him CEO Dad, a name once used as mockery, now a badge of honor. Standing on stage before a sea of people, Marcus spoke briefly but firmly. "Never believe anyone who says you can't. Turn doubt into fuel. If a single dad can do it, then so can any of you. Thunderous applause filled the hall. One journey had ended, but a legend had just begun.